We are good.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Всім доброго вечора. І ми раді всіх вітати на нашій третій фінальній зустрічі з дослідниками фотографії. Ці зустрічі, я нагадаю всім нашим глядачам, вони присвячені проєкту, який здійснює музей Харківської школи фотографії за підтримки Українського культурного фонду. І це проєкт видання книги Надії Бернар-Ковальчук, яка присвячена Харківській школі фотографії, і Надя в своєму дослідженні чимало звертається до паралелей між Прибалтикою і Харківським осередком, до тих фотографічних якихось запозичень і взаємних інспірацій. Тож нам стало цікавим подивитися на те, яким чином досліджують литовські дослідники фотографічний власний спадок, яким чином їх методологія була сформована, оскільки це дійсно та країна, яка надзвичайно поважає свою фотографію, яка надзвичайно цінує тих майстрів, які вивели її на світовий рівень. І тому ми вирішили сьогодні в якості третього спікера запросити чудового литовського дослідника. Це Vytautas Michelkevicius. Vytautas. Yeah. And so our conversation will be in English. So just everyone who can join our dialogue, please feel free to comment below the translation, and we will read your questions. We will discuss them so happily. So don't hesitate to join us. And now, please, Nadia, you can step on and just start the dialogue.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Hello, everyone who is listening us right now. Today is the third and the last online meeting with the photography researchers. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, we were talking with Olena Chervonik about our research in the academic field. Today, we are pleased to welcome Vytautas Michelkevicius, who is a curator, a writer, and the head of a photography and media art department at Vilnius Academy of Arts. We have asked Vytautas to talk about more experimental strategies of the research in the field of the history of photography, namely about his experience of a curator and artistic research. So I remind you as well that you are welcome to ask your questions. And Vytautas, I give you the floor to talk with us about this experience.
Thank you very much, Nadia and Alexandra, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be in Kharkiv. At this moment, in Lithuanian, we call it Kharkovas. And I was in Ukraine only once, in Odessa, but so I would like to come again in person and experience the landscape there. And I see that we have a lot of shared history, and also we experienced similar changes. I was kind of interesting because recently in the last month, I got 3 invitations from Ukrainians to contribute to different fields of research and presentation. For example, I was invited to write an article about Lithuanian media art in the last 20 years and to compare it in the book about changes in Ukrainian contemporary photography art and media art. So now I have this lecture, so I'm happy to be with you, and please tell me if something is not clear during my lecture. I will try to be as slow as possible, and I'm always happy to answer your questions. You can see now I'm in the room in the photography and media art department in Vilnius Academy of Arts, in the very old town of Vilnius. And behind me there are a lot of books which I published in the last 15 years. And some of them you will see in the screen and during my talk. And I will be always moving from sharing my screen to showing something in a PowerPoint presentation and also live. Yes, so I have thinking what should I do and how should I approach my topic, and I decided to do it quite personally because it's already quite a lot of years. And of course, most of the people who are interested or who were involved in my research, we are still alive. And this is also sometimes could be very useful for a researcher, but you have people you have to consult, but sometimes it's also difficult because they try to tell you that it was different than I think. So they say, oh no, the history was quite rather different. And now you're writing something, you're a young boy, you don't know how the life was going on, especially in the Soviet Lithuania, in the Soviet Union. Yeah, but they try to be somehow involved in it, and I'm giving this kind of lecture for the first time, so I'm really happy that I could somehow go through my history and show you what I have done in the terms of photography. So maybe I would like to start with one book, which you see now in yellow, and this is a yellow book, and the title is quite simple. So this is the first book I did as a photography, let's say, researcher and curator, and now I don't feel shame about it. So it was done in 2003, 17 years ago, and the subtitle of this book is Lithuanian Photography, Today and Tomorrow. So this book was quite a small performative act, and it was related towards my kind of critique on the books we have had so far in 2003. Because as you might have seen, Lithuanian photography is very strong in publishing, and Lithuanian School of Photography has a lot of books. And every year they were publishing a book, Lithuanian Photography, Yesterday and Today. Maybe you have seen, it's quite a thick book, has a lot of pictures, and it was published since the 80s.
It's like a yearbook, so there an annual book.
Yes, a yearbook, almanac yearbook, and it was published since the 80s. And we, as the young photographers, so at that time I was photographer / artist. We were not very happy that there's a lot of photography about yesterday, but not very few photography about today. So we tried it somehow to understand why it is like this, and we invited a lot of young photographers, some of them studying in Academy of Art, some not, doing some crazy things. Like these are famous Lithuanian photography critics doing some performances in Nida on the Baltic Sea beach, and they are quite happy and quite performative and doing some strange stuff. And for example, making like this conceptual photography, where you have pictures of the banknotes and bodies and some strange warnings on them. So the photography was quite different from Lithuanian School of Photography. And yeah, this book was, I did it together with my colleagues, also photographers, artists, Akvilė Anglickaitė and Tadas Šarūnas. And yeah, we were doing it for quite a lot of time, this kind of exhibitions and publications. And this one was the first kind of we did in a professional way. Yeah, so this was the story of my professional curatorial work, and why I started to do like this. I can show you by sharing one map. I did my colleagues a bit later on, but yeah, I have to jump. So this is a wonderful description of how the power of Lithuanian photography was traveling throughout the years. And for example, here in the this is a diagram, a timeline. So on the
I'm sorry, Vytautas, can I just ask you? You made this this map for which occasion?
So I will now it's just a teaser. I will show it later.
Okay.
So I was thinking maybe this map will somehow explain the situation. So this map was made in 2007. That's why. Do you see the numbers?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's from So this Lithuanian yearbook of photography was published from 1967. You see, it was not every year, but in the Soviet Lithuania, but later on it became every year. So this red line is the break of Iron Curtain and on Berlin Wall and break of Soviet Union. So the public yearly book was published from 1967 until 84, and later on it was a break, and from 97 there was a new edition already, the independent edition published, and then it was going more or less every year. So what you see here you see a lot of names of Lithuanian photographers, and this is very simple thing we did with this visualization. So each name represents one picture of one photograph in 1 year. So if you have a small name, like here, for Vytautas, for example, you have only one picture. But if you have a wide, we call it map of rivers. If you have a wide river, like Macijauskas, Požerskis, or like Sutkus here. So you see, it means in this year it was 6 or 7 pictures included in one book. So the wider the river, the more pictures were published that year. So this was kind of a tool to research the discourse and the power of it and see what kind of names participated in and were published in this yearly book. And you can see that these blue, dark blue and light blue names were active both in the Soviet Lithuania here and also in the independent, in the new Lithuania. So it means that the main core of this school of Lithuanian photography remained active, or they were publishing their pictures. Yeah, of course, it was a strong network, and they were doing a lot of integral work. And you see a lot of names, small photographers, they came in the Soviet and they disappeared after the red line, and then their new names came out. But as you see, the core stayed the same. So this map is very simple, but it also shows the power of the discourse. And we were somehow trying to understand why there's still so much images of the Lithuanian School of Photography after 16 years of independence. So we were thinking it should be we should have a scene for new photographers, for new artists to come up with their thoughts, but somehow the scene was still ruled by these photographers. So having this question in mind, I also started my PhD research, which was happening from 2005 to 2010. And later on, it came out into my book. But let's start from the beginning. So now it was introduction, and now I'm starting my presentation. I hope you see the first slide. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If maybe you have some questions so far.
No, go on.
Okay. Yeah. So this is quite you see, difficult topic. I mean, it's very broad, and I was having conversation with Nadia, and trying to understand what should I do here and what is interesting for you. So I'll try somehow to be concise and speak about my experience from artist to participant to activist to curator, and in the end to academia research. So this is the official title of my presentation. This is not official title of my presentation. Leaping from photography to PhD, to off-scene, to the beach, to the canal, and again back to the photography in the academy. So this sentence somehow sums up my last 17 years working photography. And now, as you see, I became the head of photography and media art department. And we have 15 professors and around 120 students studying photography and media art. Yeah, so this was my long story in one sentence. Let's move further on. So I think this kind of scheme, I hope you see it now, yes? It's a researcher's position continuum. It was published in one book on artistic research in 2014 by Mikael Hanula and his colleagues. And I like it very much because it somehow easily gives you the sense how the researcher can be involved in the research process of any kind of subject area. And usually, if we imagine like researcher, we imagine that somebody is sitting in the library or on the couch or on the sofa, maybe it's sofa philosopher by the fireplace and thinking about the world. But of course, it's very old stereotype, and very few researchers actually do it like this. And I found this scheme maybe 5 years ago, and I think it really well describes the ways how you can involve with your subject area. So of course, when you begin with your career, you are external observer, if we go from the left to the right, and then you go further, you become laboratory experimenter, you do some things in your own laboratory, you don't interact with the social life and social world. And then slowly you read some theory and you become ethnographer. So it means you find something what is something what is not known to you, and you have some theory, and you try to analyze some field of interest from far away. But already you have some material, you have some books, you have some pictures, maybe you have some also material artifacts, and slowly you become very interested in your subject area, and you become observer, participator observer. So you get into in the group which are you interested in. So here I could give an example. So for example, in 2003, I became the member of Lithuanian Art Photographers Association. So this was a shift already in my career, but I was at that time not yet a researcher, but more or less maybe practice-based researcher. But I was trying to do photography and do exhibitions, and I was also participating the members of this, observing the members of this association. So I was interested how they understand the world, what do they think, what is good photography, what is not good photography, and what is their philosophical worldview, and how do they understand what is art, and which photography is art and which it isn't art. So this was quite interesting. And after 3 years, I became interventionist. It means that I started to do some interventions in this group that I was researching, or association. So I started to do some exhibitions, which were not very, which were sometimes provocations, and not all of them were happy. For example, in 2006, I was invited to edit a magazine they were publishing every year. The title of a magazine was Fotografija. You understand, it's very easy to understand. What does it mean? So this is a magazine. And then I decided I should maybe do some change the position. And I called this magazine Post Photography. It means that post photography, it means something after photography, but still based on photographic thinking. And I remember I had a lot of fights because the responsible people in the Association of Photography were not very happy. They said, "You are changing our title, our identity. We might lose our funding because you changed the name of our magazine." And this magazine was full of interviews and artworks and pictures. I was actually trying to understand what is photography in the expanded field. Maybe you know there's a quite famous essay of sculpture in the expanded field. So I was interested how can be photography understood and in the expanded field, and I called this field post photography. And it was also related to all the digital changes in the world, because at that time digital photography became more and more useful and used in the world. Yeah. So
Vytautas,
Yes?
I'm sorry, I have to be a little interventionist here.
Yes.
We have a question to repeat the title of the book where the diagram you are showing now was published. Could you just specify who the author of this scheme you are showing?
Okay, I will show this book a bit later. I didn't show it yet.
Mhm.
But this was a book called Fotokarto Historiografis. So I will show this book a little bit later when I speak about the diagrams. And I think this book Nadia has, so she can share it with everybody who's listening now to my lecture.
Yeah, so by request, you can ask me. I will share this book with everyone who's interested in it.
Yes. So it was a small, let's say, intervention, and I was at that time, I think. So actually, 1 year before doing this magazine, I started my PhD. So I was officially recognized as a researcher, and I started to do these interventions, and also starting to be activist researcher. So it means that I started to change the association and the understanding of what is art photography, let's say, and how can photography be called the medium for art. Yeah, because actually, maybe I didn't tell you in the beginning, my main worry was to promote photography as a medium for art, and how could we integrate photography in the field of art, also contemporary art, and how can we somehow make it not so exclusive and not to leave it in the corner. And of course the same. Yes.
Yes, I just have a question. Why did you feel this need to be an activist inside this society? I mean, not like an independent actor, but why did you decide to act inside within this society and to change this society, and not to create a new one like we made in Ukraine, for instance? Why did you decide to act inside it?
Yeah, so in the beginning, the story was very simple. I was very admiring the pictures of Lithuanian School of Photography, and I still like them. They are very good. But somehow I was a little bit already kind of overwhelmed or overloaded by them, because every year we were publishing and republishing the same pictures in different books, but the same pictures. And I was thinking, maybe it's very good to have this strong history of photography, but we should somehow move further. And I always had this idea in my practice. It was not only me. I was also among the groups of young photographers. I was one of the most active with my friend Tadas Šarūnas. So we were thinking why to make a new one, because the old one is already quite established. There's a big infrastructure, so it's better to have communication and dialogue with them and try to work together. Yes, so in the end, you see, from activist researcher, you can become this mid-Zion with a German concept that you are already inside the subject, and then it's very difficult, of course, to see the differentiation. But still, it's quite interesting how, of course, this kind of a scheme I could apply now only backwards historically to my research position, because at that time I was maybe not thinking like this, but of course I'm now applying it as a researcher of my own research. So it's kind of meta research. Yeah, so I was always increasing this immersion and engagement, and yeah, you will see a bit later what happened after some years, after trying to do some activism and change it. Yeah, so in 2006, I was invited to curate a show of young photographers because the association had a gallery, and this gallery was mostly promoting the Lithuanian photography of yesterday. As I said, very good, very quality one. But still, for us young artists, we are not happy. There was very few young people around. So Antanas Sutkus invited me. He was still the chairman of this to create an exhibition of young photographers. And yeah, so I did the exhibition together with my colleagues, and I called it Post-Photographic Condition in Contemporary Art. So it was a very interesting adventure, and I liked it, and a lot of artists liked it as well. But of course, we don't have too much time to speak about it now, but you can find it online. And after this exhibition, a lot of photographers started to somehow not like me very much, or even hate, because I was not using the same concept of photography as we understood. As you know, maybe this is very, old story, but already in the modernist photography, a lot of images are blurry, not very sharp, and they look badly made, but they are still considered art. So it's a very simple example. But most of old generation photographers couldn't understand that this could be also art. So this is, very simple example, but of course you can go on much more deeper.
It's interesting that in 2006 there are still people in Lithuania who don't consider this type of photography like good photography, because in Europe, in Northern USA, this blur photography is considered as art photography. On the contrary, it's more interest. It's considered as more interesting, as a just documentary photography. So it's interesting that in Lithuania, because in Ukraine it is the same thing, I think. In the beginning of 2000s, people don't consider this type of photography you're talking about like a good one, and the level of understanding of contemporary processes in photography is somehow parallel, I think, in Lithuania, in Ukraine, in this time.
Mm. Yes, it was not a super new thing what I was telling to them, because we already knew this from the 80s, late 80s in the Soviet Lithuania. There was this kind of generation called aesthetics of a boredom. Maybe you have heard by Agnė Narušytė. So these artists from the 80s, we were doing like Alvydas Lukys and Vytautas Trimakas, Gintaras Zinkevičius. They were doing these conceptual, blurry images, and they were somehow opposing to the system and also to these photographers. Yeah, but still in this association, most of the photographers were this kind of very much adherent to Lithuanian school of photography, of this humanist photography. And actually, in the sense, this exhibition looked very, very much post-human. For example, if I speak about one more, here, I'm not sure if it's very easy to see it.
Can you skip from sharing your screen to your own photo? It will be better. Yeah.
Yes. So now here you see one person. Sorry, just trying to catch the light. Okay, like now. In here, there's a huge sculpture made of photography, and this is one artist did a sculpture of photographs he collected from X-ray laboratories. So here you can see he collected them in the hospitals, and there is a broken leg and broken lung and broken head. So he collected it from various people, various sources, and made this post-human, let's say, the human which is photographed by X-ray. It has no one identity. It's a collective body. So it was very much representing this time of 2006. Yeah, this sculpture was present in the exhibition. Or for example, this one made by, this is the title bliss.bmp. Does it remind you of something?
Sasha?
No?
Paint format, paint that software pre-built in Windows, yeah, BMP.
Yes, it's desktop of Windows. And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. And this is the artist himself who was watching into this digital virtual landscape. So the artist took a picture, no, actually he made a negative out of this colorful desktop, and then he produced a silver gelatin print in black and white. So it actually was trying to communicate with these photographers who were mostly doing things in black and white, and he tried to find the common language. It was really, so he said, this is a contemporary landscape. Yeah, of course, it was not easy to accept, not for all of it. But things were not so bad, and I was invited in 2007 to curate another exhibition. Or actually, maybe we applied. It was me and two art critics, Agne Narushite and Lina Michelkevicius. So we did this project, Photocarto Historiographies. And I will speak a bit later about it. And then in 2010, I defended my PhD thesis, and later on, I published a book, Generation of a Place. So I think I will finish it with this book. Let's see. Let's move forward. I will skip some things. Yeah, so I told you already this facts and 2006. And in 2009, I somehow started to be political, and I participated in the chairman election of this association. And it was maybe 3 or 4 candidates. I don't remember now really well, but I wanted to be like a real interventionist and activist and change the political line of the party, not of a party, but of the association. So this association had 260 participants. And yeah, in the end, I didn't win. And the winner was actually journalist, press photographer. And somehow there was a lot of conceptual fights, because some people wanted to do art photography, some people wanted to do like a pure journalist, and there was a lot of fights inside the association. And since that time, I also somehow went further away from this association, because the curatorial line has, let's say, drastically changed. Now,
ask you a question. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So as far as I see from this diagram, you have participated in the election while working on your PhD. Yeah. Right. Yes. So yes. Yeah. First of all, it is interesting to know the title of your PhD, because people are asking in the comments here, so about the topic you were working on and how it combined with your activistic like intentions and your politicality, your desire to change the society as a photographer, probably. Yeah.
Yes. So I will speak about it soon, but now just for those who are very interested, the title was The Lithuanian Society of Art Photography, 1969-89, an Image Production Network. So the Lithuanian Soviet Socialist Republic, as you can remember probably. So it was a special society of art photography, and I tried to analyze it as an image production network. And because we produced a lot of images and we had a special right to produce these images. So after 1 year, I published this book in Lithuanian, and after 2 years in English, so in 2012. So I will speak a little bit more about this, but let's slowly move from history back to the contemporary days. Yeah, so after 2010, I somehow, I was getting more and more into the field, let's say, of media art. I started to also work not only with photography, but also with video and some other types of art. And so slowly, somehow, next year, I was invited by another, yeah, this is the title of a thesis. Okay, so it was already in the slide. Yeah, sorry. So I did my thesis in critical media studies and published that book. So Nadia also can share it with you if you want, if you're interested. She has it. Yeah, so actually in the end, this is my kind of turning point. So the power of associations was revealed. So in 2010, I was invited by artists from another association of artists to somehow become a chairman of that association. So it was an association of interdisciplinary artists. And this association was not inherited from the Soviet Union, but it was a new one. So it was established in 1997, and it welcomed all type of artists. You could do photography or video or installation or painting. As far as your thinking is interdisciplinary, you're not closed into one discipline, you are kind of welcome to join this association. So I was a chairman of this association for 6 years. And yeah, later on, I was doing some other projects. Like, for example, I was very interested in artist-run spaces and also artists. Since you know that artist association is an association which is made up of artists and their own initiative. It's not institutional, it's not made by the director or by some state. And this interdisciplinary artist association, this is their website, Let Me Coup. It's also very funny, playful word invented by one Lithuanian artist, Evaldas Jansis. So Let Me Coup, it means like, let me cuckoo, like it's, you know, this bird, cuckoo. So it's the one which is always put into the clocks, and when the clock is turning around and it goes out and says cuckoo, cuckoo. So this was a funny title because the abbreviation of this word sounds like the title of our organization. Yeah, okay, but let's not go into this detail. So later on, I published a huge series of 2 books, Independent Contemporary Art Histories. So we were researching how artists were doing their, let's say, work and exhibitions and showing it in public spaces and in abandoned factories, etc., etc. So it was also quite interesting work I did, but let's move back to photography. Yes, so I guess we don't have so much time left, no? How we are doing?
Well, I think we can move on to the most important part of of your speech. I mean, about this exhibition where you used a lot of maps and diagrams.
Yes, I'm moving to it now. I see that already. Yeah, so there are some pictures which I already showed you before, but we are in a better quality here.
This is one you've organized.
Yeah, this post-photography exhibition, and this was the sculpture made from X-ray photographs. Yeah, so this was this project I wanted to share with you. So it was collective artistic research project, mapping Lithuanian photography, histories, and archives. So I was still very interested in the history of Lithuanian photography, and I was trying to find ways how to unlock it and find the new ways of speaking about it and working. And we also made a short name, a kind of brand name, Photo, Carto, Historiographies. So then you can combine, you see these 2 words, like photographies, cartographies, and historiographies. It was in 2007. And it was a group of art historians, curators, and artists. And we did 2 exhibitions, a weblog, and a book. So we had these quite simple questions, but very important ones. How is history born? And who and how creates the history of Lithuanian photography? Yeah, because by that time there was no, let's say, very few art historians who were writing about photography and writing about the history of photography. So there was no written any book of Lithuanian photography. So we were the biggest job that was done by this association of photographers, and they invited critics. And we were interested what visual and textual science textualize with history in the present, and what personal history of photography can I draw, looking for a position of here and now. So we wanted to involve also the personal histories, not only institutional. So we are doing some research, social kind of sociology surveys with other people and trying to ask them, what do you think about Lithuanian photography? And then we also ask, what is artistic research and what right power does it have to rethink and replay the history of ideas? So actually, this was the first time that I used the word artistic research. So it was also in my own work. And actually, in the end, we asked, how do mapping strategies not only allow representing ideas, links, and context visually, but also become a tool to discover, understand, and recreate them? So now I'll show you some maps, and maybe it will be a bit more clear. So we used 4 different types of research and presentation methodologies. For example, imaginary drawing mind maps. Then we did a huge amount of maps. And it was spatial, so we installed these maps into the exhibition and also mixed them with the artworks. Then it was performative. We did some performance pieces in the exhibition, and in the end it was textual analytical. So we published a book out of it. So I already showed you briefly this book. So here is the space of the exhibition. So you can see there are some maps hanging. Then there are some timelines of different histories of photography. And then there is a room which is overloaded by pictures. So we called it the room of abundance and kind of horror room of Lithuanian photography, because when you enter it, all the images are falling on you and you lose your mind. Yeah, for example, yes, these maps are in Lithuanian, but this was a map about Lithuanian history of photography. And these bubbles or clouds, you see there is 1932, and then there's 1945. So there are different decades which are more or less already researched, and there is a lot of empty spaces around them. So there are swamps and seas and rivers which are not yet discovered or revealed. And here with this dotted line with the contemporary within photography. So here are the different names. We have some rivers which bring connections, and here is 19th century, which is at least there is very few information about it. So this is this room of abundance. Yeah.
Just come back to this this map with gaps in the history of Lithuanian photography, because when I saw it for the first time, I really found it fascinating that you made this obvious that there is some gaps in the history that isn't discovered, and that you pointed out that there is still the gaps, and that they weren't discovered, and that there is no just narrative history, just no how to say it, the history of photography is composed by some discovered places like this. And I wrote as well in this catalog you just showed that you started from the understanding that there is no written history of Lithuanian photography, and I just wanted to ask if there is still no history, I mean the book, like a manual, the history of Lithuanian photography, or whether there was one that was written afterwards, after this.
Yeah, luckily it was written maybe 3 or 4 years ago by the same Agnė Narušytė and her colleague Margarita Matulytė.
Okay.
But the book is from the 19th century up to 1940.
Ah, okay.
So only before the Second World War. So that's it. And but actually, they have a lot of material, and the more contemporary it gets, the more difficult it is to write about it.
Because there is a lot of material to gather, and that.
Yeah, and this book is really huge, like and so many pictures and
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's at this moment it's only Lithuanian, but we were planning to do it in English, but I'm not sure. It's really a hardcore book. I mean, it needs a lot of resources.
Sure. And about resources, I was also interested. What kind of sources did you use to make this kind of maps?
Right. So these are very different tools and sources. So this one is a let's say art historian speculation. It's made by an art historian and it's her image of the history of photography. So it's very subjective, but since she's writing a lot about that, so she knows the field and she knows what is more covered and what is not yet covered.
You mean there is an author of this map?
Yeah, I don't remember now actually what was. No, actually we did it as a collective project. So,
okay.
So our collective is SHE. So it's me and it's Nagna Narushite and Lina Michelkevicius. So we were doing. Some of us were doing one map, some of us another map. So we somehow presented this as a collective body.
Okay, there is no author of this kind of image. There is no one author.
Yeah, there is no one author, so nobody wants to be responsible for it.
Okay.
As I said, it's artistic research, and this was also very. I mean, it's not what is it? Not finalized. So it's still it's very processual. Of course, this was 2007. Now it's much more different.
Yeah, can I ask one more question about that map? Well, it seems to be like concentrated on Lithuanian artists, on Lithuanian photographers from like 19th century till the nowadays, but did you feel the need to probably draw wider connections to the outside context? Could you probably speculate if it's even possible to draw some connections of Lithuanian photography with other centers, with other influences, or is it like so self-sufficient that?
No, this was not the goal of this map. So the goal of a map was more or less to see what we have inside. So we have here some. Let's say outside the events, like we have here like conceptual art, fluxus, and some other things which were possibly influencing Lithuanian photography. But every map has a different research question and intention, so it's not possible. The map is always a very difficult tool as well because it shows a lot, but also it hides a lot. It's not possible to present everything on it. So we have to accept and accept its limitations. It looks very nice, but also, I mean, it brings some things to front and something to the background. Yeah, this was this room I told you. So we did it as a collective performance. So all of us three we copied a lot of these books of Lithuanian photography today and yesterday, and also some other almanacs and albums. And then we stayed here for night and day for maybe 2 days. And we tried to bring this visual history. So now it's difficult to understand, but we put one picture to another by some intuitive logic. And and then in the end we met all together. We started from different corners and we met in one. Yeah, and also, for example, we used some kind of other visual methodology, like did this cubes. So this was a perfect landscape of Lithuanian photography. So we tried to do it a morph. You know what is morph? So when you put some different things together, and then you get a new thing out of it. So if you watch it from like frontal, when you see how all these landscapes form one together, and in the front, this is the most typical landscape, if I am not mistaken, by Algimantas Kunčius. So you see, it's a very typical flat landscape with one tree and some clouds. And in the back, you have a very blurry and not sharp photography by Remigius Treigys. Very, I mean, not nice, unfortunately, but still considered as art picture. So we said that this is this icon of Lithuanian landscape. That the most popular is, or the most iconic is on the front, and the least iconic is in the back. And if you want to show, if you want to see and get deeper into the history, you have to dig and go around it. You cannot only look always straight. So we selected 3 genres: landscape. So here are some details, and then we also selected the portrait. You see here is the first image of Antanas Sutkus, and then it goes to the end, to Algimantas Aleksandravičius. So then we have also a kind of a morph of this iconic Lithuanian portrait. And then we have a nude. So there's a third genre. And again, in the front, you see a woman. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plates, plexiglass plates, and we had prints on them. So it was 5 women and only 1 man in the background, in the very last picture. So if you see it frontal, you will see the typical nude of Lithuanian photography, like this.
So it was like a synthesis of something the most typical and something most typical.
Yeah, it was a synthesis of the most typical, and it was our like collective decision what is the most typical. So it was objective and subjective both. And then this is the room with different maps in the space, and this is a huge timeline. Actually, here it was a huge timeline printed on a huge sheets of paper, and this timeline had a lot of also influences from abroad, but it was too big to show it in the book. It had a lot of information. Yeah, so this one I already showed you. So here you can see the power of associations, and of course there is no secret here that why these main photographers were represented the most, because most of the time we were board members of the association, or let's say editors of a book, so we're always putting themselves. So it was quite obvious when you look at the historical sources.
And do you think it is the only reason they were the most represented? I mean, the fact that they hold this political power, or there may be some, because they suited, I don't know, maybe there was another reason, because it shaped, in fact, the dominant aesthetics of the Lithuanian photography. So that's why, I mean, maybe there is another reason, just not that.
Yeah, I don't think it's something wrong with it. I mean, the association was usually artist association is associations started by some artists, and they fight for some style and for some collectivity. And this association was started by Antanas Sutkus and his peers, and they were quite, I mean, they were the main influential photographers. And probably you know that in the Soviet Union, if you want to publish something, you always had to have this artistic committee, or how do you say, or board, artistic board. And this artistic board, we had to decide if this picture is, if the artistic value is good enough or not to be published. So of course, a lot of from these artists, we were also in this board, which was deciding what is good and what is to be published. So and that's how we framed. So we decided not only about the content, but also about the ideological position of a picture. If it was too much nudity or some kind of social problems, so of course we didn't let it go on print. Yeah, I was writing it in my book, in this PhD thesis, this one, about this self-censorship. But quite a lot of them, they learn what is good, what is to be published and what is not, and then we allowed them or not to be published in.
What I liked a lot that it is the fact that you cite a lot of political decisions. I mean, decisions of some committee or some meetings, some political organizations. I mean, that you use these documents like sources for your research, and that I found it is really interesting that you cited.
Yeah, so I think it's very good that you read this book. So for those who are interested, I mean, you can read it and understand it better. But now, of course, we have very limited time. I see we are almost 1 hour already. And I have so many slides, so I have somehow to move forward and to...
Vytautas, just a couple of questions here. Question from the head of our museum, Sergei Lebedinsky. He asks that whether the name of Vitas Luckus is present in this map, and so because he was expecting to have it like to be noticeable, yeah, and we cannot see it like from the first sight. Is Luckus there?
It's here. Look, do you see my map? My mouse? Sorry.
Probably no.
No?
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, and the following question that was asked, if you talk about number of publications, you are talking about publications in Lithuanian yearbook, exactly, yeah?
Yes.
And could you please say a few words about Jonas Mekas? Is he an influential figure of Lithuanian art and photography?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course, Jonas Mekas is influential, but he became influential only recently, maybe 10, 15 years ago. So that's why he's not in this map. But around 2010, already after these changes, there was some openings up of this association also. And they published also artists using photography. And also filmmakers who were working also with images. So we also recognize them because, yeah, it was very natural process. How many years you can republish the same picture? So you should add something new. So Jonas Mekas was also published in this Lithuanian photography yesterday and today, but much later, like 2010, maybe 15. I don't remember exactly, but. Yeah, so yeah, there are a lot of maps. I won't go into the details, but for example, this map represents, for example, 2 different ways of how the school of Lithuanian photography came into existence. One theory is saying that it was a big bang you see here in the 60s, and this new school came out of nothing and became very bright and powerful. And the other says that actually it was a natural development from the 19th century, and it was a natural branch of a tree. And this is the tree. It was going here, and there's another branch which was going right, which was quite different from this school of photography. And here, already later on in the 80s, I told you about this postmodernism and aesthetics of the boredom. So this was a new branch coming out. Yeah, so this, for example, these were also, we had a bigger change in Lithuanian photography in the end of 80s, beginning of 90s. So here is 4 concepts of how this change happened. And here you have a name like Agnė Narušytė, Alfonsas Andriuškevičius, art historian, Raminta Jurėnaitė, another art historian, and Lev Aninsky is Russian Russian photography critic. So there were different concepts and we were trying to show them. But let's move forward and somehow to the end of my presentation. So I want to speak a few more words about this project. So this, you can find it online. If you see here, if you Google this Lithuanian title, Fotografijos Historios, you will find these 4 books discussing the Lithuanian history of photography. So it was a research project published in 2010 and 11, and one of this publication was my book, and we had also 3 more books. So you will find some fragments of these books online. So we started to do this history of Lithuanian photography, and just very briefly about my main methodology. So I somehow coined, tried to make some, it was very difficult to say it in short, but I used the concept of media dispositive and applied it to Lithuanian School of Photography. And I said that the dispositive was the main actor network, which was, let's say, governing the photography and its style. And this media dispositive is made of a lot of different things. So it's made of, first of all, of institution, and then of a discourse. Discourse, in a simple words, it would be printed and accessible pictures. And then it was technological conditions, philosophical statements, institutional rules, and communicational conventions. So these 4 things were interacting all together and forming a specific style of Lithuanian School of Photography. And here on the left, we have photographer, and here on the right, we have spectator or viewer. And in the center, we have medium of photography, just in general. So one of the goals of my thesis was to make this model and then to apply it in practice and analyze this medium dispositive in the 60s and 80s. And why I chose this time framework. Yeah, because it was very important that this society of art photography started and it was running and powerful. And photography became an independent medium because we had artists unions for literature, for fine art, for music, for cinema, but there was no for photography. So one of the outcomes of the work of this association was that they made photography as an independent medium and also tried to detach themselves from journalism and from press photography, and we wanted to promote photography as an art medium. And then in the end, they were successful. And one of my main goals of this book was somehow to analyze and discover why this power is still present in contemporary Lithuania in 2010, let's say, already 20 years after the break of the Soviet Union. And how did they become powerful in these 30 years, sorry. So basically, in the end, I had a lot of ambitions. I wanted to compare like Soviet photography with independent Lithuanian photography, but I understood that one PhD thesis is not enough, and I somehow limited myself to the history, and the history helped me to explain the present, let's say, type. Yeah, I won't show you too much of these are table of contents. It's quite complicated, and we don't have time for this, I guess. No. Yeah, but what I wanted to tell you that maybe I can just mention a few interesting form. Yeah, for example, I was discussing the art photography, but it's a specific mode of usage of a medium. I was reading some William Flusser and some other philosophers, and trying to understand what is photography as a medium itself. And yeah, this association presented photography as a new medium in Lithuanian art, and made it institutional. And also, it's very important that this association supported the Lithuanian photographers and gave them technological conditions to make pictures, because with the home equipment you couldn't make very professional ones. There was, maybe you know that in the Soviet Union and Soviet Lithuania there was a huge shortage, deficit of good cameras and photo paper, etc., etc. So this association gave them power and the ability to make pictures and print them.
May I ask, maybe, I don't know, Sasha, tell me whether there are some more questions?
No, at the moment, no.
I just wanted to ask whether you made a research about the genesis of this term of art photography, because
the term is very complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like this.
It's historical. I mean, I don't use it anymore, but when I speak about this period, I use it. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think in English language it also sounds paradoxically, and I would prefer another concept like photography-based art, or camera-based art, or lens-based art, or because yeah, art photography, you know, the word art is also very complicated. It has two meanings. One is that you are doing some kind of creative activity as a professional artist, and it's kind of creative arts. And the other word of art is doing something very good. For example, you can be the art of fishing or the art of teaching. So in this case, people are always mixing up, and they think that the art of photography is a way to do a perfect picture, very sharp, good composition, good subject, etc., etc. But this was not my subject of interest, and I left this technological. We call it photography design. So you design a picture to have a very nice product, but there is not very much ideas behind it.
Okay, surely. It is really a historical term that was very used in Soviet times, and I'm still trying to understand where does it come from, from which author. Maybe it comes from pictorialism. So it's something that is rooted in the history of photography, and truly it is not used anymore in the contemporary photography. So just would you like to sum up and in few words, because yes, we don't have any time to develop maybe everything.
Yes. Maybe I just like very briefly just to finish. You know, what I find out that it was very interesting that this Lithuanian School of Photography, it somehow, there were two things, but like collectivism and individuality was somehow very interesting. There was interesting interaction between two of them, and also socialist realism was very also important in forming the school. And nevertheless, the photographers say that we were doing humanist photography, but also it was very much fitting the canons of socialist realism, and that's why it was my hypothesis that that's why we were so popular and they were printed a lot in magazines and books, etc., etc. But only if the picture started to touch some socially sensitive topics, they were not so popular anymore. Yeah, so there are a lot of intentions, but actually, in the end, my conclusion was that photographers were only partly independent. So we were following this main style, this so-called Lithuanian school of photography, and I call them semi-non-conformism.
It's very interesting, like
yeah. So they were not like this Moscow conceptualism, who were breaking the rules in art and doing something else, but we were a little bit non-conformists, but also in the end they were conformists. So they were going from one side to another. And
is it your invention, this term, or it was used already somewhere, this semi-non-conformism?
Yeah, it was used in Lithuanian art history by Vytautas Michelkevicius. I was quoting him in the book. Okay. So he was using it for painters and for fine arts mostly. And I somehow adapted also to photographers, and they say that they were very free and independent to do things, but in the end, you know, this dispositive or discourse of this actor network was so strong that they were only free in this framework, so we couldn't go beyond it.
So thank you very much, Vytautas, for this lecture and for this information. I see you have so much to say. I just say one more time for everybody who are listening us that if you're interested, I can send you this the PhD thesis of Vytautas and the catalog of the exhibition we were talking about. Thank you one more time for this speech, and you know, we will put it in the YouTube channel of the museum, so everybody will be able to see it one more time. And thank you very much for your questions, and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.